I'm Mabel, 34-year-old. 3 days ago, my mother called me for the first time after 8 months of silence. Not to ask how I'm doing. Not to ask about her two grandkids whom she's never visited even once. She called to give an order. You have to sell your husband's land. $3 million. In 2 weeks. To save the family from bankruptcy. Funny, isn't it? That family didn't invite me to Christmas because my husband wasn't their type. That family let my mother go around telling my sister's kid Aunt Mabel married down. That family where my genius brother-in-law once called Ethan, my husband, a dirt digger right to his face. And now they need us. Before I tell you what happened at my mother's 60th birthday party, what got exposed, and the choice I made, hit like and subscribe if you truly want to hear this through to the end. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know which corner of the world you're hearing this story from. Now, back to it. Everything started 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I was the kind of daughter my mother showed off like a trophy at every garden party. I'd graduated from Columbia and was working as a junior analyst at a boutique investment fund in Manhattan. One of those labels that made her eyes light up every time she said it out loud. "Oh, my Mabel," she'd say, slowly swirling her wine glass like a queen she's going to run all of Wall Street one day. And I believed her. I believed the straight-line script was destiny, a corner office, expensive suits, a steady climb, a husband who was right, the right last name, the right background, the right money, a life that looked approved the second anyone glanced at it. But that was the life my mother wanted. It wasn't the life I was actually living. I'd been burning out back then and refusing to admit it. Burnout shaved me down piece by piece, waking up with a heavy chest, going to bed with my brain still sprinting like a machine. I didn't need a luxury getaway. I needed one weekend where the air didn't smell like ambition. And that one escape trip was the moment everything started to split into a different direction. I hadn't met Ethan yet in this part, but you need the context I used to be, the Mabel version my family loved most because she made them look good. Then that version started to crack. I met Ethan at a farmer's market upstate on a trip I took to get out of suffocating Manhattan for a minute. I meant to breathe and quiet my head. Instead, I froze in front of a rough wooden table, piled with organic tomatoes and bunches of herbs that still smelled like soil. Ethan was behind the table, a faded flannel shirt, mud on his boots. No shine, no polish, nothing right by the standards of the men I'd been surrounded by at networking parties. But when he talked about the land, the seasons, crop rotation, the logic of farming, his eyes lit up in a way I'd never seen in any conference room. The kind of light you only get from someone who actually knows what they're living for. I came back the next week. Then the week after that. And then again. It just became a pattern. When I finally brought him home to meet my family, my mother only had to glance at Ethan's calloused hands to flip straight into judgment mode. She gave this thin paper smile and asked the question that would haunt the next 7 years. "So, Ethan, what's your real job?" No apology. No awkwardness. Not even a second of hesitation. Ethan looked her in the eye and answered calm, steady, like hammering a nail into wood. "This is my real job, ma'am. I grow food." The room went dead silent, like someone had thrown cold water in everyone's face. My sister Clarissa leaned toward her husband. Derek whispered something, and the two of them started laughing. I pretended not to hear, but I heard every word. And I knew from that moment on, my family had decided Ethan wasn't enough. And yet, somehow, that exact moment made me even more certain. This was my man. The engagement party was supposed to be a happy day. My mother insisted on hosting it at her massive colonial house in Connecticut, the one she'd decorated her entire life for the sole purpose of getting other people to walk in and nod approvingly. There was champagne canapes, about 20 guests, who were all the right kind of people. Ethan wore the nicest shirt he owned. I could tell he'd ironed it himself, the collar sat a little crooked. But somehow, that made me feel more tenderness and respect than any designer suit ever could. Clarissa and Derek showed up 40 minutes late, pulling in with a brand new Porsche like they were on parade. Derek made sure to speak loud enough for the entire room to hear. Maid partner last month figured I'd treat myself. He shook Ethan's hand, but his eyes flicked down to my husband's shoes like he was grading him. "Shoes are clean, but old. Practical, huh?" Then he smirked. "Nice boots. Do they come with a tractor?" A few laughs scattered through the room, the kind of laugh weak people make when someone else is being turned into entertainment. Ethan didn't get angry. He just smiled back. "Yeah," he said, "it's a package deal." And then came the worst part, when my mother raised her glass to make a toast. Stupidly, I thought she might say something kind. She didn't. She looked at me like I was a failed project and said, "Here's to Mabel and Ethan." Mabel has always been independent, stubborn, really. I just hope that in a few years she won't regret throwing everything away for this. And she gestured vaguely toward Ethan like she was pointing at a stain. My father sat there in silence, staring at his whiskey, not saying a single word. And right then, under the table, Grandma June squeezed my hand. "I like him," she whispered. That night I made a decision. I was leaving New York. I was choosing Ethan. And I was done asking my family for permission to live my own life. Vermont welcomed us like an old friend. Ethan and I bought 200 acres about an hour from Burlington. The house was the definition of falling apart but full of potential drafty windows, a 1970s kitchen, a porch that creaked like it was guarding secrets. But it was ours. Not owned by judgmental stares. Not owned by the Ashford family standards. Ethan threw himself into the work from sunrise to nightfall, building beds, setting up irrigation, running pipe, negotiating with suppliers. I learned alongside him how to read the soil, watch the sky, understand the rhythm of the seasons. No more fake meetings. No more feeling like I had to perform to earn approval. Just real work and real outcomes. 3 years in, our organic produce was selling at 6 farmers markets. 5 years in, we'd signed contracts with 3 high-end restaurants in Burlington. And then Lily arrived one snowy morning in February, screaming like she'd come into the world with opinions already formed. 2 years later, Noah was born quieter, watching everything with the same eyes Ethan has. I had never been that happy. And that's when I realized something. Only weak people need the right standard to survive. Strong people build their own standard with their hands. If you've ever been looked down on by your family or pressured to sacrifice yourself to keep the peace, comment 1 so I know where you stand, standing up or bowing down. There's something I don't usually talk about because Ethan once told me, "Don't tell your family." And I kept it to myself, until everything finally exploded. That first winter in Vermont, I thought Ethan spent every night by the fireplace reading farming magazines, taking notes like a pure farmer. But the truth was, he was doing something else. He was filing patents, running simulations, talking to investors, calls he only took after I'd rocked the baby to sleep. Ethan wasn't some lucky farmer. He had a past my family couldn't even imagine. Before the flannel shirts and muddy boots, he belonged to a lab. He'd gone to MIT. He had a PhD in agricultural engineering. His dissertation on precision agriculture technology had caught investors' attention, startup offers, big money deals, the whole package. And he walked away from all of it. He gave up the reputation. He gave up the proper path to wealth. To choose what he believed was right, building something real for real farming. He built his company quietly, no PR, no bragging. Just a product that worked, customers who paid real money and real growth. I once asked him, "Why didn't you tell them?" Just so they'd shut up. Ethan only said one sentence, "They don't deserve it." And back then, I still didn't understand just how much that sentence was going to save me from a betrayal so filthy it still makes my skin crawl. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was half awake, half asleep, one hand resting on Noah's back, because he'd just jolted up from a nightmare. My phone vibrated on the nightstand and I saw a name I hadn't seen in 8 months, Clarissa. I picked up, and instantly, I knew something was wrong. Not the fake performative crying she used to do as a kid to squeeze money out of Dad. This was different. This was raw, shredded throat crying. Real desperation. "Mabel, I need you. We're in serious trouble." I stepped into the hallway and gently closed Noah's door so he could sleep. What kind of trouble? Clarissa was breathing, like she was terrified I'd hang up. Derek made stupid investments. He lost everything. The house, the cars, the savings. Wiped out. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Then she said the next part, and something in my spine went ice cold. "We need $3 million in 2 weeks. Or Mom's going to lose the Connecticut house." I asked, "How is Mom involved?" Clarissa tried to dodge it, then just collapsed into the truth. Mom put the house up as collateral. Because she trusted Derek. And then came the line that almost made me laugh from how shameless it was. Just sell the land. It's just land. You have hundreds of acres. Cut off a piece and it's done. Right then, Ethan stepped out of our bedroom. He didn't say a word, just looked at me, his eyes saying more than any sentence could. Clarissa's voice shifted. Sharper. More familiar. You owe the family. We're family, Mabel. Family. I rolled that word around in my mouth and it tasted bitter. I said, let me think. I'll call you tomorrow. And I hung up. But before Clarissa fully ended the call, one slip of the tongue got through one sentence that kept me awake all night, Derek said. Your husband's company was supposed to fail. That night I didn't lose sleep because of the money. I lost sleep because of that sentence. Your husband's company was supposed to fail. Who decided it was supposed to fail, and why did it sound like a plan that had already been written? Ethan went back to sleep, but I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The blue light washed over the dark room like a courtroom. I typed Derek's name into Google and added a few keywords, hedge fund partner terminated. And there it was. An older article from about 6 months ago, Derek Mitchell terminated following internal review. Mutual departure was just a polite coat they throw over getting kicked out. Nobody goes through an internal review and then leaves on good terms. I read it again and again. Something about it felt rotten. So I kept digging. On a finance forum there was a thread about some spectacularly stupid shorts, and Derek's name showed up like a punchline. That Mitchell guy went all in, short on some agri-tech startup, stock ran up 340%, wiped him out. My hands went ice cold. An agri-tech startup. I stared into nothing for a long moment, then reached for my phone, scrolled my contacts, and called Rachel Simmons, an old Wall Street coworker who now worked in compliance. Rachel picked up, sleepy and irritated. Mabel, it's the middle of the night. I need you to confirm something. Derek Mitchell, what happened? There was a pause. Then Rachel let out a dry laugh. He shorted an agri-tech company all in. The stock went up 340%. He got erased. I swallowed hard. What was the company called? Rachel answered, and I knew I was about to slam straight into the truth. She said the name. I didn't need any more details because a second later everything in my head snapped together into a picture so clear it was cruel. I hung up and stood there in the kitchen like I'd been nailed to the floor. My chest felt heavy. Not because Derek had invested stupidly like Clarissa had sobbed, but because the worst possibility was rising up fully formed. Derek didn't lose because he got unlucky. He lost because he wanted us to die. I went back into the bedroom. Ethan was awake. He didn't ask, why aren't you sleeping? He didn't ask what happened. He just looked at me with the eyes of someone who already knew how this ended. You know now, he said, calm. It wasn't a question. It was confirmation. I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding my phone like it was a burning stone. How long have you known? Ethan leaned back against the headboard and let out a slow breath. About 8 months. My whole body went stiff. 8 months? You knew Derek was betting on your company to collapse. And you didn't tell me. Ethan looked at me. No excuses. Just the truth. I didn't want you to hurt. I knew a part of you still had hope for your family. I gave a dry little laugh, no warmth in it. So what did you do? Ethan squeezed my hand gently. I let them burn themselves. The best answer to someone like Derek is to keep building. Don't bow. Don't explain. Don't ask permission. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We need to talk. Come to my birthday party. It's important. I handed it to Ethan. He read it, looked up. Do you want to go? I met his eyes. Yes, but not to sign anything. The next morning, while Ethan was getting breakfast together for the kids, I picked up my phone and typed in the company name Rachel had said the night before, Agrimine Technologies. And exactly like I'd feared, the search results immediately threw up a big feature Forbes posted about 3 months ago. I clicked. And there he was, Ethan, but not the Ethan in muddy boots and a worn flannel. In the photo, he wore a navy blue sweater standing in front of a greenhouse filled with sensor equipment. Clean, calm, unflashy, but you could still feel it through the screen. That quiet presence of someone who builds real things. I scrolled and read. Every line felt like a slap to every piece of contempt my family had thrown at him for 7 years. MIT PhD at a young age. Walked away from the glamorous offers. Built precision agriculture tech in silence. And then I hit the sentence that made me stop and swallow hard. The company is currently valued at around $47 million. 47 million. My husband, the dirt digger in Derek's mouth, had built something worth $47 million in silence. In mud. In late nights after putting the kids to sleep. In the beat-up pickup truck he still drove every day. I didn't save that article to brag. I saved it because I understood I was going to need the truth, something undeniable. If you've made it this far, hit like. It's a small thing, but it helps stories like this reach the people who are being worn down by family and pressured into sacrifice. That afternoon, Rachel called again. Her voice wasn't sleepy anymore, it was the sharp, serious tone of someone who just dragged something filthy into the light. I found more, and you're not going to like it. Send it, I said, and my heart started beating heavier. A few seconds later, a screenshot popped up, a leaked email from an internal group chat during the investigation into Derek. The timestamp was exactly 8 months ago, the same time Clarissa disappeared from my life. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. Derek had written something like, "That farm project of Mabel's husband is about to collapse. I've got a sure tip from someone on the inside, his tech won't scale. I'm going all in short. Making money off his failure will be sweet, but seeing Mabel's face when she goes bankrupt will be even better." There it was. Not stupid investing. Not bad luck. Not an accident. It was deliberate cruelty. He didn't just want Ethan to lose, he wanted me to hurt. He wanted me broken so he could prove I'd married wrong, chosen the wrong life. I saved the screenshot into a separate folder and locked it away like a knife in a drawer. Not for some childish revenge. For the moment they tried to drag me in front of an audience and I'd need something that would shut them up instantly. And right after that, I called my mother. I called her, and she picked up immediately like she'd been sitting there waiting for me to finally behave. "Mabel, finally. You decided to pick up." Her voice softened, a little soft in that calculated way. "You'll come to my birthday party, right? This is important." "I'll be there," I said flat. "Good." She exhaled like she'd just won a round. "We have a lot to discuss." "The paperwork." "I've prepared everything." I paused. "What paperwork?" "The land sale papers," she said like she was talking about ordering flowers. "Derek handled it. It's very simple. You just need to sign." I almost laughed. Derek handled it. The man who'd gambled with my mother's life and wanted to watch me go bankrupt, and she still trusted him like he was some kind of saint. My mother really was the type who worshipped appearances so much she'd hand someone the blade and offer her own throat. "I'll be there Saturday," I replied, calm. "Is Ethan coming too?" She hesitated. That hesitation wasn't politeness, it was contempt. "Yes," I said immediately. "He has to." Silence. Then the familiar sigh, the one she'd used my whole life, the "you're disappointing me" sigh designed to control me. "Fine. But Mabel, don't make this awkward. We're family." Family. That word again. Weak people use family like a noose. I didn't answer. I hung up. And in that moment I knew it for sure, this 60th birthday party wasn't a party. It was a trap. My mother's 60th birthday was exactly her style. Crystal glassware, white linens, jazz, and a private room full of people who came to be seen, not to celebrate her with anything real. Ethan and I arrived right at 7. He wore a simple button-down, no tie. I chose a green dress, not expensive, but fitted, because I wasn't there to compete over who looked richer. My mother stood at the entrance smiling her VIP guest smile, but her eyes kept flicking around like she was running numbers. "You're here," she said, air-kissing my cheek without touching. Then she glanced at Ethan, fast, sharp, and turned away. "Everyone's waiting." There were about 40 guests inside. I recognized a few of my mother's social friends, the kind of women who lived to rate each other's handbags. A few of Derek's old co-workers, all wearing strained expressions. Some distant relatives, and in the corner I saw Grandma June. She lifted a hand in a small wave, but her eyes weren't happy. They were warning me. Clarissa sat near the head of the table, the faint tracks of crying still visible under a layer of powder she'd tried to use as a mask. Derek sat beside her, jaw clenched, staring at his phone like the thing owed him money. My father showed up with a whiskey in hand, and for once he actually initiated a handshake with Ethan. Good to see you both. Something felt off. The whole room was holding its breath like it was waiting for a performance everyone had rehearsed. The second we sat down, I knew it. They hadn't invited me to celebrate. They'd invited me to pressure me into signing. The main course had barely hit the table when my mother stood up and tapped her champagne glass. The room went silent instantly, the kind of silence you get from a crowd trained to listen when she speaks. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday," she said, sweet as honey. Then her tone shifted, cold and sharp. "But tonight I want to talk about family, and what it means to help each other when times are hard." I already knew. The bait was out. She turned straight to me. "My youngest daughter has a little farm. Lives simply. But it seems she's doing fine." The way she emphasized the words made it sound like I'd won the lottery, not built a life. A server appeared like he'd risen from the floor and placed a leather folder in front of me. I didn't touch it. My mother raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Mabel just needs to sign. Sell a small portion of land so I can keep my home." 40 pairs of eyes locked onto me. Right on cue, Derek stood up and slipped into his role, the reasonable man. "Fair market value. All the paperwork is clean. And your husband's land, honestly, isn't worth that much anyway. My husband's land. Not our home. Not our future. Not our children's security." They said it that way on purpose to make me sound like a dependent and to make Ethan sound like an asset they could sell. She abandoned the family to play house as a farmer's wife. My mother delivered the final line, staring at me like it was an order. "So Mabel, will you sign? Or do you want everyone in this room to know you've never cared about family? This wasn't a party. This was a courtroom, and they wanted me to sentence myself with a signature." I let 5 seconds pass in silence. The whole room held its breath, waiting for me to bow. But I stood up. No pen, no folder. Before I answer, I said, my voice calm enough to cut glass, "I have a question for Derek." His smile twitched and stalled. "What question?" "One. Very simple one." I looked him straight in the eye. "Explain to everyone exactly how you lost all your money." Derek's face tightened. "That's not relevant." "It is," I cut him off. "You're asking me for $3 million. So everyone here has a right to know what that $3 million is actually covering up." My mother stepped forward, trying to slip into her familiar "let's smooth this over" voice. "Mabel, this isn't the time." "Then when is it, Mom?" I turned to her. "After I've already signed." The room started to murmur. Clarissa went pale. Derek's jaw locked, his eyes flicking around like he was searching for an exit. I kept going, every word clean and deliberate. Derek was fired from his fund 6 months ago. He didn't resign. And he gambled Mom's retirement money. Clarissa burst into tears. "Stop." "I didn't." I pulled out my phone and opened the evidence I'd saved. He shorted a company, betting it would collapse. And he wanted it to collapse not because of investing, but because of spite. I looked up. "You want to know why he needs $3 million? Because he burned everything down hoping my husband and I would go bankrupt. If you were in this situation, would you sign or would you stand tall? Comment 1 if you'd stand tall." I scanned the room. The faces that had looked smug a minute ago shifted into shock and embarrassment. My mother had gone white, her hands shaking like she was holding something fragile that was about to shatter. Clarissa sobbed. And Derek stood frozen, exactly like a man who spent his whole life bullying people and never once imagined he'd be unmasked in public. I lowered my voice, but the words still landed like knives. "You're not asking me because of family. You're asking me because you lost. And you lost for one reason." Derek made a bet on my husband's failure. Then I read the line that turned the entire room to stone. "Seeing Mabel's face when she goes bankrupt will be worth more than the money." Someone sucked in a sharp breath. A few guests lifted their phones, staring at Derek like he was something dirty. My mother stammered, "Derek. Is that true?" Derek wouldn't meet her eyes. And his silence was the answer. I turned back to my mother and set the boundary with a calm that felt almost icy. "Let me be clear, so we don't have to perform anymore. I'm not signing. I'm not selling the land. I'm not selling my future. And I'm not selling Ethan's sweat to rescue the pride you worship." Clarissa choked out. "So what about Mom? What if she loses the house?" I nodded slightly, no dodging, no softening it. If Mom loses the house, it's because she chose to trust the exact person who deceived her, and because she raised this whole family to look down on people who do real work. I slid the leather folder aside. Unsigned. Never signed. And right then, Ethan stood up. He rose, and the entire room went quiet. Not because anyone suddenly respected my mother, but because Ethan had this calm about him that made people stop daring to underestimate him. He looked at my mother and spoke slowly. Clearly. Mrs. Ashford, I don't need your approval. I stopped waiting for it a long time ago. My mother lowered her eyes like she'd been slapped without anyone lifting a hand. Ethan continued, still steady. But I also don't want you to lose your home. Because Mabel is still your daughter. My mother's head snapped up, hope flaring like a drowning person spotting a lifeline. So, you'll give $3 million. Ethan shook his head, firm, final. No land sale. No $3 million. The room held its breath again. Then Ethan offered the one thing none of them expected, a way out, but not the kind where you kneel and get rescued. I will offer you a personal loan enough to keep the house for now, so you have time to sort things out. But there are conditions. Derek jolted like someone had dragged him out of a dark corner. Ethan lifted 3 fingers and laid out each term like a stamped seal. Derek pays back every dollar with interest over 5 years. A legal contract. Derek must go to treatment for gambling, speculation with proof of participation, and from this day on, this family does not ask us for money ever again. Derek exploded. I'm not taking charity from some farmer. Ethan met his eyes without blinking. This isn't charity. This is a boundary. If you don't like it, don't take it. Derek snatched his coat, turned and stormed out, throwing one last line over his shoulder. This isn't over. The door slammed shut, and in that exact moment I saw something on my mother's face for the first time in 7 years. Fear. Because she finally understood the power had changed hands. After Derek left, the room felt like all the air had been sucked out. Clarissa let out a broken little sob and ran after him, her heels clacking against the marble floor, each step sounding like a life cracking down the middle. The guests started to quietly slip out. That's how society people are. When everything smells sweet, they clap. When it starts to stink, they vanish. Oh, Victoria, what a wonderful party. We'll catch up soon. All fake, said with a smile, then they grabbed their coats and disappeared like they were fleeing a fire. In less than 10 minutes, a room of 40 was almost empty. Only 5 of us remained, my mother, my father, Grandma June, Ethan, and me. And on the floor, shards of a broken champagne glass still glittered under the lights, exactly like the Ashford family image, beautiful on the outside, shattered underneath. My mother collapsed into her chair. She looked visibly older in a single night. No more Victoria Ashford, proud and untouchable, just a woman who'd been stripped in front of the very stage she built. My father was the first to speak. He stood up, hands in his pockets, shoulders sagging like a man who'd been running from himself for too long. I'm sorry, Mabel. I should have said something years ago. I was a coward. I looked at him. Something loosened in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But at least the truth had finally been spoken out loud. Grandma June stepped in and wrapped me in a tight hug. I'm proud of you. My mother still didn't speak. She stared at the unsigned folder like she was staring at a plan that had just died. And I knew from this point on they would have to live with the consequences of the contempt they'd once treated like power. After that night, my family began to fracture in exactly the way they'd earned. Clarissa called first. Not to apologize. Not to ask if I was okay. Just to deliver a sentence like she was reading a news report. Me and Derek are separating. She'd found stacks of credit card statements, debts Derek had hidden the way people hide trash under a rug. I don't know who I married, Clarissa said, her voice hollow. I didn't say you deserve it, even though my mind had a dozen lines ready. Because in that moment, what I saw wasn't winning or losing. It was someone standing in front of rubble she helped create by choosing to believe. My mother was different. She didn't call to apologize. She didn't call to explain. She chose the one tactic she'd always used, best: silence. But this time, the silence wasn't power. It was shame. In the end, she sold the Connecticut house. Not exactly because she couldn't afford it, Ethan had given her a way out, but because she couldn't bear the neighbors' eyes. News spread faster than fire. The birthday party had turned into a scandal, and Victoria Ashford had been humiliated on the very stage she'd built for herself. She moved into a small condo in Hartford, clean, tidy, practical, the kind of life she used to look down on. And she didn't say a single word to me. As for my father, for the first time in years, he stepped out of the shadows on his own. He started calling me every Sunday. At first, it was only a few minutes, awkward, clumsy, full of little pauses, asking about the kids, the weather, the season, the crops. But he kept calling, week after week. At the very least, he was learning how to be a father late, but learning. At the end of September, I sat on the porch and watched the fields start to change color. Ethan was out in the yard teaching Lily how to check soil moisture while Noah ran circles around them, giggling. My kids' laughter echoing over land we built with our own hands sounded like an answer I'd been searching for 7 years. I used to be afraid of losing my family. I used to lie awake at night asking myself, what if they're right, what if I'm wrong? I used to wait for them to truly see me, not Columbia, not Wall Street, but me. Mabel with dirt under her nails, with a man who grows tomatoes and somehow grew peace along with them. But then I realized I'd been waiting for the wrong people. People who only look at the world through appearances will never see what's real underneath. Ethan stepped up onto the porch and sat beside me. I said something small, but it cut through a lifetime of chains. I think I'm done waiting. Ethan nodded. Boundaries aren't punishment. Boundaries are protection. I can't force my mother to love the right way. I can't fix Clarissa. I can't save Derek from his filthy arrogance. But I can choose to protect my home, my land, my children, and the man who quietly built an entire future. Real family isn't the place where you're pressured to sign away your life to keep the peace. Real family is the place where you get to live without asking permission. And I choose what's real.